If you use the built-in drums in Logic and you want them to actually sound good, then you need to check this out. Today I'm going to show you how to use the Logic drummer to add real sounding organic drums to your songs, and I'll even show you a few tips to take it to the next level. This video is for people who write, record, or produce their own songs in Logic but wish their drums sounded better. So if that sounds like you, you're in the right place. I've been using Logic for over 10 years and I frequently use the built-in drum sounds and the drummer track, especially when I need a quick groove and don't feel like programming it. But by default, they really don't sound good, and so over the years I've dialed in a bunch of tips and tricks and all sorts of things that help these drums sound real. So please make sure you like and subscribe, and I'm going to get right into it. So if you've never used the Logic drummer before, or you don't know how to get to it, or you need a refresher, you can press this plus button right here. This is the add track button, and make sure you select drummer. So you've got software instrument, audio, guitar, bass, and then drummer. Once you select drummer, go down here to genre and pick the genre that's kind of closest to what you're working on. I'm going to do songwriter because I'm doing like a folky kind of song today. And then make sure you have open library checked and go ahead and hit create. So when you do this, lots of stuff pops up. You'll notice your library panel on the left. You can toggle it right here with that button. This is going to be a collection of genres and drummers. Each of these genres has a handful of drummers that play in a different style, and they're all named and have a little avatar thing. It's a nice touch. And then down here in the lower section under sounds, you'll see the drum kit that drummer is using. And this is where you can change it or pick a different sound preset for your drums. But by default, each drummer has their own kit. So like this guy likes retro rock. I really like the 60s songwriter. He uses the Liverpool kit. So it's just a quick way to like, yeah, if you're going to be using this genre, it's probably going to sound best with this drum kit. It's like their suggestions, and then you can change it after. Down here in the bottom panel, the editor, this is where you can dial in what your drums are actually doing. And so over here you have beat presets, and these are different for each drummer, so that's handy. If you go through all the beat presets and you don't like it, you could try a different drummer or something like that. Over from there, you have a little XY pad that can make your sound go from simple to complex or from soft to loud or literally any combination in between. So this is a really quick way to like tell them like, hey, shut up, like play quieter, or like, hey, do lots of ghosting or hit it really hard. That's kind of like where you're communicating with your drummer. And then over here, this is where you can choose different kit pieces. Like if you want the kick, don't want the kick, or if you want to be played on the toms or cymbals or hi-hat, you can quickly dial it in there. You also have a percussion section here, so you can pick different percussion to go along with the drums. And then all these sliders are variations of whatever you've selected. So if you've selected toms here, you have variations of tom grooves. Same thing with your kick and snare down here. Continuing on, you have a little knob for fills, a little knob for swings, so you can dial in the feel. And then over in details, you have a couple more options. You have a push-pull on the feel, you have more or less ghost notes, and then you have a hi-hat section, which for this guy, it's on automatic. So the way I like to go about adding the drummer to start is just picking the drummer that I like and the drum sound that I like, and then I start arranging parts. So let's go ahead and I'll show you what's happening. And when you first pull up the drummer, it populates you with one region, and you can make this bigger or smaller, and it'll automatically kind of draw in parts, or you can slide it around. So I don't want my drums to start right away, but here's the beginning of the song. Here it comes. That's not good. So that's initially like a lot of people's first thoughts of the drummer is it's like, what are you doing? Like, that's not what I wanted. So the very first step is to start to mess with your grooves and your beat presets and your kit pieces and start to get something that's kind of good. But for now, let's just have kick and snare. I took out a lot of stuff. He's doing this flam that I don't like, so I'm going to change my beat preset. That's pretty basic. So I'm going to add a little bit of swing in there, and for my case, it's a 16th note swing. So just add a little bit of that, and then that'll start to help the feel a little bit. Of course, he's only playing eighths. So I went ahead and turned off the snare, and I liked how that worked, but I'm gonna play with this slider here and get some kick variants. Don't like that. Let's try to make it a little more simple. Yeah. That's a good start, and what I think some people do that might mess them up is they're like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna loop that, but that starts to hurt your song because a real drummer is not just gonna play the same exact thing. So what I recommend doing is clicking your region and going Option, click, drag, and pulling that region over, and then now you make changes to it, right? Because you dialed in your groove already, you know how you like the feel, but now the song's progressing and we need something else to happen. So coming out of that, so now it definitely needs some backbeat. So I'm gonna click that snare to turn it back on. And I want more hi-hat, so I'm gonna check a different variation. I actually want more ghosting on this section, so I'm going to pull up ghost notes and see if we get a little more there. So right there we go to another change. I'll go ahead and click Option, click, drag again and see what that sounds like. So the chords kind of change here, the feel changes. So I'm gonna move the drums from hi-hat over to cymbals. We'll see what that sounds like. And then right there, it goes back to the original feel. So I'll shorten that region and then click, drag another, make the new one 8 bars, and we'll switch it back to hi-hat. So I kind of want to change the feel here and bring it up another notch. One way you could do that is by adding to the soft, loud, complex thing here, which we'll try and see if we like. Oh, I like that. Yeah. All right, now we're to the B section again. We're going to go back to ride. Pull that up. Cymbals, here we go. I want this one to have more energy, so I'm going to pull up the fills a little bit. And you can see when that happens, some little waveforms got drawn in. Let me make this bigger. That might help. to the final part of the song. It's just 8 bars left. We're gonna go back to hi-hat, and I'm gonna play around with it even more, show you a couple other things you can do. So over here on this hi-hat section, if you hit automatic, it's gonna automatically decide, like let the drummer decide how open his own hi-hat is, which could be cool if he wants a variation. Some other things you can do while we're at it, say I want this last section to push or pull a little more, you can adjust that knob here. And what that does, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of how on the beat the drummer is versus like pushing, kind of rushing a slight bit or dragging a slight bit. And depending on the vibe of your song, you'll want to adjust that. So there's like all the way pushed, here's pull. Other things to check out, both these fills and the swing have a little lock, and what the lock does is preserves those settings if you change presets. So if we suddenly want to go to like number 9, the preset called number 9, those didn't change now. So once you dial in your swing and the amount of fills you want, just leave it and lock it, and then you can change presets without that changing. If I go back to backbeat now, the other thing you can do is mess with this kick and snare to really change the pattern and feel. So here's number 1. Like really straight. These last two here, and it might be different depending on the drummer, but you always have some sort of option for half time or double time. So if you want to quickly change that feel, you can do that right there. And then double time. Actually, I like that. So the other cool thing, you might notice this box here that says follow. And so if you really don't know what your drums want to do, or you just want to keep it really simple to your song, go ahead and check that, and it lets you pick an instrument. So I usually like to start with bass here, and what it's going to do is look at the transients of the bass and change your drums to just follow the bass. So if you listen to the bass soloed here, where's my bass? Doing this kind of like bouncy walk thing. So the drums have now changed, so the kick and snare especially match that. And then once you dial that in, you can still play with this XY box here. So if you want it really simple, you can do that. Or just all the way loud and complex, or a little softer. So again, that's a great way to get some originality, because once you use the drummer a handful of times, you're like, oh, I've heard all these beats before, but let it follow something in your session, especially if it's like your primary instrument. Let it follow your primary instrument. Like, you've already put the thought into kind of how that performance is. So why not just have the drummer follow it? That's what drummers do anyway, right? Sometimes. I'm going to also add some percussion to this last one just to give it a little bit of a lift. So let's do maybe a clap sounds good. There you go, it's done. You can change the variation. Like that. Or if you wanted a shaker, sorry, a tambourine rather. Cool, so now I'll play that all together. The last thing as far as arranging goes is you'll notice this ends right before the downbeat of the last beat. That was kind of weird, but I mean to say it doesn't play the downbeat of the final, like the last note. So just drag it like a tiny bit. And you get your crash ending if you want it. So that's a way to quickly dial that in. Now you have a full drum track that evolves as the song goes. It's great. It already sounds pretty good, but there's mixing things and routing things we can do to really take it up a notch, because a lot of people can get it this far, but it's getting it that like professional polish that I'm going to show you next. Open the mixer, press X to open the mixer. If you don't know what's going on in the mixer, I just did a video on that a couple weeks ago, so I'll link it and you can check that out. But this is our drum track right here, and by default it has a bunch of stuff on it. Some of it's helpful, some of it's not as helpful. So what we're going to do is get rid of all of this. So just click no plugin on all of it. We're going to put it back and it's going to sound better. And you can get rid of this send as well. Now on the drum kit designer, by default it's in regular stereo operation, so you're going to want to make it multi-output. So go click right here and go to drum kit designer multi-output. It might preserve your drum kit. It does. Great. So what we're going to do is this plus button right here, hit this, and Logic's going to automatically route and label those channels for you. So now all of a sudden we have Liverpool, we have kick, snare, toms, hi-hat, and if you hit play, you'll notice the audio for each of those things is coming through the new channel that we made, and it's not the original channel that's like hosting the plugin. And you can solo them up. And you'll notice cymbals still come in on this Liverpool main channel. So I'm just going to call that, you can call it overhead or cymbal or whatever you want. And now one thing that used to bother me with this is you make these down here, but you can't see them in your main window. If that bothers you and you want to fix it, just highlight them all, right click and hit create track. And now in your main window, you can see all these. And what this is going to allow us to do is create a track stack. So highlight them all, press Shift Command D and create a track stack, and you're going to want summing track stack. This is going to create a sum, and then we can do bus processing to the entire sum. The additional cool thing about this is once you make a track stack, you can play the drums and record MIDI on it. So that's something you can't do. You can play on one of these, but you can't record on it. So if I go and hit it and hit record, it's going to say drummer tracks don't support recording, but track stacks do. So make your track stack and then you can record drums over top. So say you don't like this fill right here, even though it's pretty cool. So shorten it to just the distance you want the fill. And then you can just record over on the track stack, put your own fill there. So then I recorded that in there. Done, right? So additional ways to add more flexibility, you can hop back and forth between MIDI and drummer really easily. And you can, if you want to just commit this whole thing to MIDI, you can do that. Just highlight them all and drag it over a MIDI track and it'll make MIDI for you. But I prefer to keep it in drummer form as long as possible because it just makes it easier to deal with. Unless I'm full committing to just programming drums on the song, that's up to you. But if you want to make MIDI out of it, you just drag it to a MIDI track. So I'm going to show you a handful of my favorite mixing tips, especially for MIDI drums, and it's going to take it to that professional sound really quickly. The first thing is parallel compression. So you're going to want to highlight all your drum tracks, hit X to open the mixer, click right here where it says sends, and create a new bus. I'll just use bus 1. You'll see it popped up over here. We're going to call this drum para. Okay. And now we're going to send all of these at unity. So highlight them all, option and click. And now if we hit play, just to test, we're going to see them coming in here on drum parallel. So on the drum parallel, we are going to go to dynamics and add a compressor. And my favorite compressor to do this with is either the classic VCA or the vintage VCA. I'd like to encourage you to try both and see what works better. We're going to use classic today, unless I hate it. The idea behind parallel compression is you have your original drum bus, or whatever you're compressing, not compressed, and then you have a parallel path, meaning like happening at the same time, same copies of the sound, but this one is getting absolutely slammed with a compressor. And the end result is a blendable, basically punch and attack that you can add to your drums. So I'm going to start pulling down this threshold. I pulled the ratio up to 4.1, and we're going to get a lot of compression. This sounds really good right around 10. So you might have heard that kind of pulsing cymbal just then. So I'm going to pull our overhead and hi-hat down about -5. That'll help take care of that. I'm going to add a little bit of makeup gain because we're compressing a ton. And now we're able to blend this parallel compression in with our regular drum sound. And that is a super quick way to add lots of punch and attack to your drums. And I guarantee you any top 40 record or any drum sound you've heard on the radio is using parallel compression, so you definitely want to do that to your software drums. Next, we're going to do a drum reverb. So highlight all of them again, and we're going to create another bus. Let's try the small room that's already in there. It's one of those ones that Logic makes for you. I don't know if I'll like it. I don't like it. Sounds disgusting. Okay, we're going to make our own. So just put it to another bus. I'm going to use 4. All right. And we are going to use Reverb. I'm going to try the vintage concert hall and kind of keep the decay a little low. Nope, that's not it. Let's go to spaces. Let's try rooms. Large studio drums room. That's okay, it just feels pretty dead or like bright. My goal with reverbs is to get rid of these sub lows because those will really kind of mess up, it'll mess up your lows, make them dirty. And then the top end is really where it sounds fake. So if you roll off top, it'll help it sound more like a real room. And then turn that down and blend it in because we don't want too much of it. And then that kick is not doing it for me, so I'm going to pull that down about -5 or more. Great, so now we got drum parallel compression and room reverb. And now I'm going to quickly EQ and compress each of the following. And actually I like to EQ and compress before I reverb, so I'm going to go ahead and mute that drum reverb and the parallel compression. I got ahead of myself there. So quick EQ on everything. I'm just going to highlight them all, click to add the EQ. And run through these tracks really quick, and we're gonna cut lows, cut mud, and boost for some character. That's it. So we'll start with the kick. So starting with this low cut right here, I'm gonna push up and sweep until I hear the fundamental, like the beefy, good part of the low end, and I'm gonna roll off right there. And when you're on the 12 decibels per octave filter, you can actually boost where you're cutting to give a nice resonant hump. So that's what I'm going to do now. That's nice and thick right there. So I'll roll with that. Next, I'm going to cut mud. So I'm going to grab one of these mid bands, sweep around somewhere between 200 and 1K, and wherever it sounds the worst, I'm going to pull out the frequencies there. Great. And then the final thing is just a boost for some character. So I'm going to take this top or high mid right here and just find somewhere that it sounds nice and has a nice natural feel to it. Probably right there, just a little bit. So here's without that. Here's with it. Now we're going to quickly run through and do that to the rest of the drums. Find some toms. So our mud cut and some character. Great. Back to the full section. Mud cut. Somewhere in there. And I'm not going to boost character on the hi-hat because I don't like to do that. Character I really want from the main drums. But this can just, whoops, this can kind of get nasty up there. So not going to do anything. And then same thing on the overhead. We're going to just deal with the low end and the mud. Great. So let's take a listen to all our drums with and without that. So here's without our changes. Get a little more here. And here's with it. So cleans it up, gets a lot tighter feel, punchier, all of those things. Now we can turn back on. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but with compression on each one. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the regular compressor. And my go-to is the Studio VCA for this kind of thing. And we're going to do 3-to-1 with an attack around 20 because we want enough attack space for that transient to get through. If you're not familiar with compression, I have a video explaining it in a lot more depth, so I'll have that somewhere. For now though, I'm just gonna run through and get just a little bit of compression on all of them. I actually like the vintage VCA for this, so I'm going to, now that I've got it dialed, I'm going to go ahead and copy that to my snare and toms and just check it. Let's check the tom section again. I'm going to compress that a little more and add some more makeup gain to kind of get that level higher. Better. Okay, here's all our drums with EQ and compression now. There we go. I'm going to bring back parallel compression. And the drum reverb. Give a longer section of song here. This reverb has a nasty overtone, so I'm going to find that and get rid of it. Another thing you could do is add some light compression to your drum bus here. So I'm going to add yet another compressor on the vintage VCA, set it to 4:1, attack at 30, and release at 100. And then I'm just going to pull down this threshold until I'm getting like 2 decibels of gain reduction, somewhere around there. I'm going to send more of my hi-hat and ride to the room to kind of give it more of that spacey feel. Finally, I'm going to send my main drum bus, my parallel, and my drum reverb to one final drum bus, just so I can add some global processing to the whole drum sound. We'll call this drum master. And the main thing I want to do here is add some sort of saturation and any other color. So I'm going to start with the Logic EQ, Vintage EQ Collection, Vintage Console EQ. This is like a Neve style EQ. And I'm going to push this drive until it's sitting how I want. You notice my drums are really loud over here, so I'm going to pull down all of my tracks a little bit. And for this, I'm going to boost some top end to give it some of that polish and sparkle. I hope that was helpful and maybe gave you some new ideas on how to make the Logic Drummer work better for your own songs. If you have any questions about the Logic Drummer or anything else I covered in this video, please go ahead and ask down in the comments. Or if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one Logic coaching session with me, you can check out the link below and visit my website. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe.